Until I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I was disgusted with what I saw. So I said, you got to make a change, man.
It's all about fun, laugh, and getting through life. That's what it's all about.
I find you have everything to gain with Christ, and without him, everything to lose.
Said I'm gonna lay you down, just like the bridge over troubled water. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Shannon. Thank you for joining us tonight. And let me introduce my co-host that joins me every week, Dr. Vanessa de Danzine. Hi, Vanessa.
Hello, Lottie.
Well, look, tonight's topic is a very sensitive topic that we want to talk about: bereavement. How do we handle grief? And if anyone has ever lost a loved one, we know the pain that we go through. So we invited two special guests on tonight to help us talk about this because it's such a sensitive topic, but at least maybe we can get some relief from just having a discussion about it. So I would like to welcome Reverend Tamara R. Jackson. She possesses a dual master's degree from Princeton Theological Seminary and Rutgers University School of Social Work. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a certified clinical trauma professional, and an ordained minister of the gospel. And our next guest is the Reverend Karl Delk from Bethlehem Institutional Baptist Church from Brooklyn, New York. And let me just say about Reverend Karl Delk, he calls everyone for their birthday every year. So we want to applaud him for making us feel good on our birthday. Thank you, Reverend Delk. But tonight's topic is how do we handle grief? And we all know that's a sensitive topic because when something happens, you know, we're in a lot of pain. And even for myself, I just lost my brother a couple of weeks ago. And, you know, I want to discuss, you know, some of the things that, you know, like I was feeling, because I know other people feel the same thing: denial, anger, depression, and acceptance. Because at first, when it happened, it's like you're in denial that it's not true, which we know is true, but we're in denial. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think the fact that you don't stay in denial. You might get there at that point, but denial is not something that you let linger on in your life, because you know you get to the point to know, as you always said, with your background, that these things will be in life, but we never know what we're going to say or do at that given time. So you do feel denial, but you don't keep denial for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. In my experience, when a person is in denial, it all, obviously, a couple of things happen. So the high functioning person is all about execution. Let's plan the service. Let's make all the arrangements. Let's call everybody that needs to be called. So denial works for them, right? Because it allows them to operate.
At that time, yeah.
At that time, right? Where it is inefficient is obviously if somebody continues to try to operate as if nothing has happened. Sometimes, at some point, and rather quickly, I will say, you're going to have to face that your loved one has transitioned, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the anger and or depression comes, because they jump. There's not absolute from denial comes anger, or from denial comes, one. It's not absolute. Grief is so much more complicated than that.
Yeah. How long does it last? How long do you keep that type of feeling in your life? You really don't know, but you should get better as you go along.
Right.
Not to stay in the same dilemma, so to say. Because some people will not grieve then, but then when they get alone or by themselves, they bust out and cry or
absolutely,
or whatever, and that's good relief. But they don't stay in that stupor all the time. They get through it, and prayerfully, that's enough where they can move on. And then I've learned that these times help you to be an example to others when they're going through also. Even as non-Christians too, because you've been there, you know kind of what they feel, the depression or denial they have, because you've been there. Before my son died, and before my mother died, I did plenty of funerals, but I didn't know what it felt like to lose a child or lose my mother until it really, really happened. Then I could see how people felt at that moment. And both of them I love dearly. You know, thank God I got 4 more children. But you know, at that point, you know, you don't know what you're going to feel or what you're going to do, but you don't have to stay in that same stupor, that same dilemma all the time. It's got to get better.
Yeah.
I
agree with Reverend Delk. I lost my mom last year.
Okay.
And I also agree with Reverend Jackson that you're high functioning, you getting things ordered, you're put in charge.
Yeah.
And then I've been around death every day in the work capacity that I worked in, and it's never the same.
Right.
When it hits home, it's never the same. And I found myself in this pivotal moment where I was by myself, and like that's what I did. I cried. Not crying out of anger, but crying like, you know, I don't have a name for it, but it was just that moment. You know,
you're relieving yourself.
Yeah.
Of what was in that you was holding, and that cry helped you to relieve yourself to move on. You know, even though it's in your mind, but it don't have to affect your health. Or
that's all. The crying is an ongoing thing. That's forever.
Right. Crying is gonna be.
My mother, you know, don't care how long they've been dead, you can just sometimes be driving along and you get to think about it and you bust out and go to crying, you know, or they just be sitting and talking to someone and you start crying and they looking at you like you're crazy.
You might listen to a song on the radio.
Well, that's a good point that you bring. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a good point that you bring up, Lottie, right? Because it's not just. I guess what I want to lift up too is the reaction of grief is not just always crying, right? And this is kind of how we get into the wheelhouse of even depression. Sometimes people implode inside, and that's what depression is, kind of like feeling taking all of these heightened emotions and putting it inside this loathing for self, right? This sleeplessness, or I can't get out of bed, right? This not eating, you know, this sometimes it's the use of illicit substances, right? To cope and to just get through the day. So all of those things is part of this wheelhouse. And sometimes people can go long straights without doing any of that, and then it'll come right on back. And that's why I said that's what makes grief so complicated, because it's not absolute. After I process through this, then okay, I'm good again, right? It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, because when you was talking about like, well, I don't know what I was in. I don't know if I was depressed. I don't know what was going on, because like I say, each death has been different. When my father died, it was different. But then when my mother died, it was like, because that was like my sister, because I don't have a sister, so my mother wasn't my sister, you know. And when she died, because she wasn't sick or anything, I talked to her that morning, and by night, she's dead. You know, the thing that it was is I walked around like a whole year like a walking zombie or something, like, you know, that's how it was until it was like just one day. I know that God was speaking to me. I know he was speaking to me. It was just one day that I just felt my mother saying, like, you know what are you worried about me for? You need to be worried about yourself. And you need to get it together, because you have a daughter to look after. I didn't live my life, you know, because she used to tell us that all the time. Don't be worried about me. Be worried about yourself and everything. It was like she was speaking to me or something. And that's when I was able to get myself together, you know, to move on. Because I was just like that whole year, I just couldn't get it together. And then when my brother died, I was angry with him and still carrying around anger with him. But he did. I don't know. I guess you're not supposed to be walking around angry with dead people, but I was angry with him because he didn't tell me he was sick. So by the time I found out he was sick, he was already like near the end. So then the pandemic hit. So I really couldn't see him that much or whatever. So I didn't really get to see him on the end as much. I could just talk to him on the phone a little bit, but not be able to talk. And I was angry, like, well, if I'm your sibling, why you can't tell me that you were sick?
Right. I'm gonna speak. Can I speak to both of those things real quick? So when you said about your mom, right, and kind of like you're walking around kind of in this alternate reality, basically, right? This disbelief that my mother is gone, right? And you finally you could kind of like hear her voice saying to you, "What are you doing?" that's the benefit of when people process grief with a therapist, because that's not something that we can jump to, right? But over time, that becomes the question. So if your loved one was here today, if there was something that they could communicate to you, and this is almost verbatim things that I've said, right? If they were here today, what would you think? What do you think they would say about how you're living right now? Like what your response has been, right? And that is always the thing. Oh, my son wouldn't want me to be depressed. My son wouldn't want me to, or whomever wouldn't want me to be moping around as long as they would want me to keep on living. And then that becomes an in, that becomes a resource. Okay. So if you know that your loved one would want you to move forward, right? How do we remember, right? Because closure doesn't equal erasure. And that's the biggest thing that I teach people, right? Closing the chapter that this person is not physically with us does not mean that I'm forgetting them. Right. And that's a big part of grief too. Right. Second point, really quickly, to your brother's thing. I'm glad you said the why, right? Because anger is just this default emotion. It really doesn't tell us anything. But as a therapist, my job is to pull back the onion to see why, what's behind the anger, right? And a lot of times it's, okay, I wish I would have known. Or sometimes, a lot of times, believe it or not, it's guilt. People who weren't on speaking basis when their loved one got killed or transitioned or whatever. I mean, there's so many very complex emotions. And so it becomes working with that first and to get them to the closure, to get them to the healing, to move forward.
And I think also that what you're saying is right. But I think the way that we respond after everything is over, how we still show our love and concern for that individual.
Absolutely.
By calling them or taking them out and just letting them know it's going to be all right.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wish I could keep your loved one here, but I couldn't. I know you would do the same. There's a lot of questions to be asked, but a lot of answers you're not going to get. How do you get to the point to move on? Hey, I'm here for you. How you doing? How you feeling today? And let it be an ongoing thing. You got to call every day, maybe once a week or whatever, but let it be a point where they know somebody cares. Somebody is concerned. Yes, I'm angry, but I don't have to stay angry. As I said earlier, anger is all right because anger is not a sin. It's what you do about your anger is the sin. So the feelings are there, but I think that follow-up is very, very important when it comes to I do, once a year, hey, happy birthday, or if I know somebody that's passed and I know the loved one, I might call them and say, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? And they might say, well, Rev, it still hurts. And I say, yeah, I know it's going to hurt because I hurt, but I know it's all right because, hey, this is the way life is going to be. And this is the way we have to know and understand that you're born to go this way.
Well, before we go to break right quick, I just wanted to say when you said about the calling, we all know that when someone dies, everybody's calling you. The phone is off the hook. Everybody's in your house every day. And as soon as you go to the graveyard, the next day you don't hear from anybody.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. That is the problem. Absolutely.
It's just like nothing has never happened, whatever. That's what you were talking about, Beverly, that the people need to know that the people need support going forward. But we're going to be right back with more of this conversation. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right. George Floyd. His name was George Floyd. Say his name.
Say his name.
George Floyd. Say his name.
Say their names. Once again and always, we fight for justice.
Black Lives Matter.
Go to blacklivesmatter.com.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we're talking about how to handle grief today. Now, before we went to break, we was talking about the support and everything. But when we was talking about the anger part, I still want our loved ones, and they don't have to, like you said, Reverend Jackson, they don't have to. But I think that if something is wrong with us or seriously wrong with us, I think we should share it. I don't think the family should be caught off guard and be in shock to find out that you were sick
Well, you know, but sometimes people do that to protect you and themselves because they don't want you to go through what they're going through.
Worrying.
But how's that protecting you? I don't understand that. How's that protecting?
Okay. You're not going to understand it because you feel that he should have confided in you. But see, he knew in confiding in you how you might be able to react to it. So he did that for your own safety and love that he had for you, not to confide in you because he wanted you not to get upset or stick behind what he was going through with. And that's what you have to accept, you know, from anybody that might not tell you, not that they don't love you or they don't care about you. They love you enough to say, no, I'm going to keep this to myself, you know, because if I don't, then she's going to have to go through a lot that she don't need to go through with everything else that she has to deal with. So you have to accept the fact, take it out of love, and not that they didn't like you or didn't want you to know.
No, I'm not. I wasn't taking like they don't like you, but what I was saying is, I just feel that, you know, with a loved one, when you lose them like that, like if you even know they sick, what you would do is, you know, you'll start trying to spend more time with them. You start calling them more.
Right. But see, they want you to spend time with somebody else. They want you to be with somebody else that needs you more than they did.
I think Lottie.
They were going through the pondering with themselves, and they knew that you being there would be a blessing. They knew that, and they know your heart. So they were already satisfied in that area, but they just didn't want you to have to encounter what they were going through, even though you love them. And you'll never understand why, because he's not here to tell you why.
Exactly.
No, I know you.
I totally agree with.
That hurts you more when you find out and you didn't know, even though they might think they saving you or whatever, but it hurts you more.
I just would say it's very complicated. And while I say it's very complicated for the reasons that Reverend Delk said, but even to a host another of reasons, right? Everybody doesn't have great family relationships, right? So they don't communicate with their family because their family is not going to be supportive. But equally, I liken it to, you know, you go to visit somebody in the hospital who is sick, right? And they spend so much time pretending, right? That they're okay so that you won't be worried.
Right.
So,
right.
A lot of times when people don't share, it's just they don't have the energy to pretend. And I know that doesn't make those who remain feel comfortable, but that's just reality. They just don't have the capacity because they know they're sicker than even they can even communicate. And they don't want you to walk through that. And they don't want to spend whatever amount of time they have left trying to work you through your emotions with being okay with what's happening to them. What's happening to them is already hard enough. Knowing that you're dying, I'm sure Reverend Delk can attest to this. When you walk with somebody who is actively dying, whew, that's heavy.
It is rough.
I know, that's for sure. That's a whole different process. I mean, my mom was in hospice, and I watched for 3 weeks to the day, 2 days when I asked the doctor how much time she had, and it's a whole different environment. It's a whole different environment. When you're there, and you watching just like go stage by stage, and they even have it's documented with the expected stages over time and research of how the individual transitions when you know how close and near it is. And I think that was more or less difficult for me. And I worked in a capacity where I dealt with death and homicide every day. And this is like, it was just a total different phenomenon witnessing that every day. And it's like, it's just,
absolutely.
You think about it, nobody knows how they're going to act, how they're going to feel when it's happening. My point is, and I'm kept saying, you don't have to stay there, okay? But you're going to be there, but you don't have to do anything because of what you're going through with that will be harmful to you or somebody else. But go through what you're going through with. Prayerfully, that will be your relief avenue. And as I said earlier, my son's been dead over 10 years, since 2009. Okay, and it still hurts. I can maintain and I can go forward, even personally with myself. I'm on dialysis. Okay, but now I've been told I can get a kidney now. Okay, and that's nothing but the work of God.
Yeah.
I mean, prayers and everything going up. So I'm gonna get on the list for that. Then I'm gonna talk to my children and ask them if they would. And then if they don't, it's no love lost. You know, God has been with me all this time, and He's taking care of me, and I know it.
Yeah.
So I can be there in the fact of knowing the miracles of God, which He's done in my personal life, and I share that when I preach or whenever I talk to somebody. And as I tell folk, during this pandemic, I'm not being safe or careful. I just want to be faithful.
Right.
Because God has not changed. Right. He is still the same. He has not changed. He has not got any different. But we're making a change because of the government. And I've never heard de Blasio nor Cuomo ever say that God told them to do this, that, and the other. The CDC or Dr. Foss said about this pandemic is getting worse and it's all this, they predicting this. Nobody said what God said. And I don't think that God is pleased of how we are treating Him as good as He's been to us during this pandemic. Okay, no one has died from the virus. They died because it was time to die. You have to realize that.
I'm sorry, I have to interject.
Yes.
I have to interject. Because I know the show is not too long. So there's a couple of things that I want to speak to what Reverend Delk said, but I want to first speak to the topic that we're talking about, bereavement.
Okay.
So some tangible things that people can do, right? Because now we're in holidays, right?
Okay.
So regardless of whatever circumstances that a person has lost, there's a loss, right? So now we're in holidays, right? Okay. So one of the ways that I help people begin to move forward is helping them to remember, right? And how you remember is important. Is because the person is not just their expiration date. The person had a whole life before this. So it's something as simple as birthdays. You know, what was the person's favorite meal, or favorite drink, favorite color, favorite flower? I mean, very simple, but that's how you remember. You loop them in. You continue to loop them into the family narrative. Same thing with holidays. Was it a particular Thanksgiving meal that the person liked? Was there a particular Christmas, something that they particularly liked for Christmas? Like one client that I have, it was like their mother loved the ugly sweaters, even though they weren't into the sweaters, but that's what they bring forward, right? So this is how we remember, and this is what becomes the balm of Gilead, right? To soothe this transition, this time, and that's very important for people to hear. How you remember. It's not just getting over. You have to be intentional in how you remember, because it's not just the person's date of death, right? It's a whole life that they had. What are the movies they like? What are the stupid jokes that they said? All of that. Music, all of that can come and it can just be so soothing and healing. Yes, you may cry through it, but it becomes more soothing and healing than it's, oh, my loved one is not here. Okay.
You are so absolutely right on that, because it was Thanksgiving. You know, it was my daughter's first time cooking Thanksgiving dinner, so she made the turkey and everything, right? And you know, the different stuff that goes with it. So like I was telling her when she was cooking, and I was like, now you know, Mom would not put something in there like that, or you know, Mom would have put that. You know what I'm saying? Like I was telling her about what my father, when they cooked. My father was an excellent cook, and I was like, well, you know, they didn't put that stuff in there or nothing like that, you know, or something like that, you know. Or like my brother, like he used to come over and watch the Westerns and things like that. I guess we have to watch the Westerns by ourselves this year or something. You know, we were
but what a wonderful way to remember.
They was still, you know, around and stuff. So that's something too about talking about them in conversation.
Yes, that's interesting, because
how do you help the person that don't have that type of background like you have?
That's how I was going to ask.
And that's what I was talking about, after the calling and to check on them, and like you say, Dr. Jackson.
But even the person is not trained. You're right. By the presence that you're saying, right? You visiting and stuff, you're listening to stories, right? Right? Like, oh, really? You know, and it's something simple. You don't even have to be a therapist. You can be like, word, you know, when you're sitting with them or whatever, you know, okay, well, what did the person like? Like, almost kind of like
remembrance.
Yeah.
Summoning or having them jogging their memory through the senses, right?
Yes.
Well, if you remembering their scent, did they wear cologne? Did they wear perfume? I mean, it can be very simple.
Right, I understand.
That's
very,
true.
very simple.
You know, when we talk about faith, what about the individuals that's dealing with loved ones that have transitioned and don't have a faith? How do you recommend or begin to show them a path of grief?
Okay, I believe that you give them you. Okay, you be an example to them. Okay, you might have to say a word, just be you. And if they know what you've been through with and see how you react to what you've been through with, it might give them a juggling or help to know it's going to be all right. Why does she act the way she do? And it just happened to her. She lost her mother. She lost her brother, sister. Now I'm losing mine. Hey, I can be the same way. I can have that jubilant spirit and still be who I am, but just accepting the fact of what happened. If they're willing to do that and able to do that. But I think you can be an example.
Exactly. To piggyback on that, the biggest part of my job is, well, the biggest two parts of my job is the power of presence, right? Because that's basically what we're talking about here, first and foremost, being present, right? And then the second biggest part of my job is active listening. I think the problem people often have when it deals with grief or any type of problem is they talk too much. You know, you need to listen. No, I don't mean that to be crass.
No, right.
You know, but you have to listen, because if you listen, a person will tell you everything that you need to know. I don't have to ask somebody what stage of grief you are in my office. If I listen, I know exactly where they are. And I know where to target my questions, you know, and what I'm treating, right? Because a lot of times I'm treating the symptoms of grief, right? I have to treat the heaving. I had, you know, this person that was heaving, vomiting. I have to treat that first. I have to calm down her nervous system before we can even get to discussing what has happened, right? Or I have to bring up their system if a person is like clinically depressed first. I have to get them within their window of tolerance that they can even have a discussion about it, right? So it's just like, if you listen, if you just listen, a person will give you all the information that you need, and you target your questions accordingly.
That's true too, because I think what you want to do is just talk. I think a lot of times you just want to be talking.
Yeah, you want to fix it, but it's not for you.
You just talking. A lot of times
it's not for you to fix.
Yeah, and you just want the people to be listening while it's almost like venting. It's almost like you're venting or something like that. Yeah. Well, we have run out of time for the first part of our show, and you know, I'm so happy, Reverend Delk and Reverend Jackson, that you came on to join us. And
thank you so much for this opportunity.
A few minutes for our show. We're gonna cut the show here and say goodbye to everyone, and then we're gonna come back for our after show for a few minutes. So we want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope what we have talked about can, you know, help you in some way or not. But anyway, thank you. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Okay.
All right.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon. It's Shannon.
Hi, we're back for our after show. So I hope you stayed around for our after show for a few minutes. And thank you, Reverend Delk and Reverend Jackson, for staying for a few minutes. You was talking before we had to leave the first part of the show about people being able to talk and someone being able to listen. And I was saying that's a good thing, because sometimes you just find yourself just talking. just talking, talking about the person, talking about whoever the person is, because it makes you feel better. It makes me feel better when I can talk about them and say things that especially talking about like funny things that they used to do, like that. It helps me. It helped me. You know what I'm saying? So I know it's hard, like I say, to move forward, and you can move forward, and you will move forward. It's just that the pain will always be there. But like
you have to be encouraged. You have to be encouraged also.
Yeah.
And in good time. That's right. That's right.
Right. Encourage yourself and be encouraged by others. Yeah.
That's right.
I want to ask both Reverend Delk and Reverend Jackson, in the capacity of the work that you do, especially Reverend Delk with services and funerals and that capacity, and also listening to others that have these traumatic events. How do you yourself deal with self-care?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah.
Very good question. That's a very good question. I just feel that with self-care, I have to do what I need to do to keep myself afloat and keep myself, available. And I want to be available. I don't know when my last day will be. I just want to be stronger physically to do more for God, okay, because he's been good to me. So I'm going to do what I have to do to be physically strong to continue his will. See, I like to visit hospitals. I like to go to nursing homes. I like to do certain things that I know I can't do now because of the pandemic. But I'm saying the main thing is to, take care of myself, right, where I can be there for others and be my mind to be in a place where I can answer the questions, or some things people shoot at you, especially me. I don't know where they're coming from, but the Lord is gracious enough to give an answer or to help me say something.
Yeah.
Right on the moment, the spur of the moment. So I like keep my trust in him and believe in him and just let things afloat.
To answer your question from my standpoint, Vanessa, they say every pastor needs a pastor. I have a pastor, right? So even when I was in pulpit ministry, I've had the same person shepherding over me, right? Because you just need that support. Pastoring can be a very lonely place, even when you're married, right? Because there's just stuff that you cannot share with your spouse. You just can't.
Right.
Equally, they say every therapist needs a therapist. I have that, right? And that's just the basics. That's just starting from the top, right? Of just supports that I need to be able to work in the capacity in which I do. But equally, I exercise. I'm mindful of my diet. With this COVID pandemic, like the influx of people who came and stuff. So to kind of work on my own mental health, I started a garden. I didn't know nothing about gardening, but I said, I'm just going to do it. And God was faithful. I grew so much stuff. You know what I mean? I had my own, and I knew where my food was coming from. I knew it was no additives or preservative, so it just became this very rich opportunity. And those are the things I do. I used to run. I can't run anymore, but I was running half marathons and at a different stage of my life. So I've always done things. I write, listen to music. So any and everything basically that I kind of shake down from even a client, or even a parishioner, right? Because that is one of the questions that I ask. What do you enjoy? What brings you joy, even if you haven't done it in a while, right? Because again, it's embedded in them. So sometimes we just have to help people unearth what's already in them as a coping tool, because that's basically what we're talking about, coping tools. And so, I practice it myself. How can I? Dealing with souls and dealing with minds. How can you not? Right. Yeah.
So when you're working, okay, so let's touch on a little bit about the depression, because, I do know of situations that people have lost their loved ones where they were so tight with each other. Like they were just like connected as one. And then they lose that person and they just go into this deep depression, almost to the point of like committing suicide, because they don't feel that they can live without
That's right.
Now, because you got to really be careful and watch what you say into someone like that, not to set them off. So how is the best way to talk to someone or help them when you see they're at a suicidal position?
But I've learned sometimes people will blow up maybe or be in a depressed mind. Listen to what you have to say and won't tell you or show you that they have taken in what you said and will use it behind your back because they don't want you to know that they're out of that stage. But you have helped them because you love them and you felt you had the right antidote to talk to them and tell them what they should know. Okay. You might go to your grave and not even know how many people you've blessed or just seeing you walk down the street knowing that, hey, that's a blessing because of who you are. So my thing is, be yourself, do what you have to do. And yes, depression is a state of being, but you don't have to stay depressed. And the point of it is up to the individual themselves to not to want to be in a depressive mood for what it might make them do to themselves, as you say, commit suicide or harm someone or commit a sin. Okay? And if that's the way they feel is their way out, then that's what they're going to do. But you're going to let them know that it's a better way, and like I say, they're not going to respond right then. They might still act depressed in your presence. As soon as they get around the corner, they say, thank you, Jesus, or thank you for, for your feelings and for your talk, for what you said. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing,
I would say I would answer that a little differently. Not that I disagree, but I would answer it a little differently. Depression is a slippery slope. And when you're talking about suicide or suicidal ideation, right? So suicidal ideation is not uncommon, right? There's some types, people, it's not uncommon for people to have fleeting thoughts, something has happened and now, okay, that's my way out. The problem comes is when that becomes action, right? Or when somebody has a plan, as we say, right? So the questions that come, and no, you don't have to be a clinician to ask somebody questions, kind of probing questions like, you got weapons in your house? That becomes important because if they have weapons in their house, then there has means, right? You're saying that you're thinking about this. You had a plan for this, right? Most people don't have a plan. And I will say just outrightly, if somebody really wants to commit suicide, and this is just outside of grief in general, just in general, if somebody really wants to commit suicide, they're not going to tell you about it. They're going to do it. Suicide is an action-oriented behavior, right? So when somebody's still talking about it, there still is time. There still is time to kind of get them to some type of help, resources. Sometimes medication helps, to lift up the mood and stuff like that. But the person who is really suicidal is not talking about it. They're not talking about it at all.
Sometimes I know, especially this month now, December, I'm on call with dispatch for any traumatic events in the city. That's pretty particular for law enforcement. And sometimes when we get these kind of interactions with people calling and there's some kind of stage, you may not know initially, but just with the job itself has a lot of additives to it that may bring down the morale, that may cause people to be helpless and hopeless. And sometimes these people, just because they don the uniform, they don't get the opportunity to really express themselves and look for help, adequate help, always in time.
Absolutely.
As well, depending on the capacity of where they work and what they do and what they present themselves as to the people around them, especially their families.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, because now talking about handling grief, and like you said, Reverend Delk, about we know we come here, we did not come here to stay. We know that at some point we're going to die. We know that, and we're preparing to die. because that's what they say we're supposed to be doing, preparing to die, whatever. Not that we don't want to go anywhere, because I mean, I'm not ready to go anywhere, but I'm prepared.
Yeah.
I know I'm leaving, so I'm be ready to leave. But the grief is such it's like it's something that you just, even when you talk about it, it just, that feeling that you can't describe. And the pain sometimes is a pain that you just don't understand. You just cannot understand that pain that you're going through, even though you know you're going through it. But it's just a pain that you just can't even describe what it is. And it's something like that. I just feel that we can't do anything about it. That it's going to happen. It's going to be. And like you said, we have to learn how to deal with it. But learning how to deal with it is the major problem, is learning how to deal with it. And we...
Well, just like you say, if you get a headache, you take an aspirin. And that aspirin in your mind is going to soothe that headache. It's going to it's going to go away.
Absolutely.
So now, when you in that stage, you want something that's going to bring you out of that stage, if that's what you're looking for. Or do you want to stay into that same angry stage all the time? It's really up to you, okay? Because I understand you keep saying, Lottie, that, about this anger and how things hurt, and it does, but it don't have to be forever. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh no, it's not going to be forever. It's like, even now, I'm not feeling
give yourself permission. I'm sorry,
not anger anymore. That's what I was feeling at the beginning.
Okay.
I'm not feeling like anger now, because I have accepted it. I have accepted it, that's what their decision was, and that's what I'm gonna have to live with the decision and all like that. That's how I felt at the beginning. Like now, I don't really feel that way. All I can do now is deal with my pain each day, and I have to take each day one day at a time.
That's what I was gonna say. No, that is gonna. Sometimes it's gonna be better. Sometimes it's gonna, and that's what I was going to say. Give yourself permission to feel. It's okay to feel. And I guess that's what would be my takeaway for you, Lottie, in particular, right? Give yourself permission to feel. It's okay. It's not going to be like this always, but this is the season that you're in, and that's okay. God is still meeting you.
That's right.
Here now, right? You're in a valley moment. God is still there, right? It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's there. I'm a believer. I'm a true believer. And I know, because, you walk, what I do when I walk around, I just ask him to lift the pain off my heart. Just, lift it. Because that's what I had to do when my mother died. That's what got me through. I just kept asking, to lift the pain. And then, it took a while. Then after a while, I got all right. And then, I could deal with it and everything. So I know, like I said, since it's not the first time that I've been through it, but I guess because it's still so fresh.
Yes, it's very fresh. That's why I say give yourself
it'll never go away. It'll never go away.
Yeah.
But nobody say it gets better, but it'll never go away. No. I don't
How
think
do you
nobody
deal with an issue when it is children who has lost a parent?
Yeah.
Okay.
When our audience members wants to know, how do you deal with this issue when it is children who lost a parent? How do the children deal with the grief? Is that the same thing with them as it is with the adults losing someone?
No, I guess it's got to be a difference. It's got to be a big difference in how they feel. Okay, but now the point of it is, who is their support factor while they're going through what they're going through with?
Yeah. Age matters. I would say age matters, because now you have a broken attachment. And now who's going to fill in,
that's the key.
To fill that attachment, that maternal figure.
That's right. It might be the same person, but at least somebody have the kind of love. And I always say, you got more women that have not given birth to children that are more mothers than those that have given birth.
Exactly.
I totally agree.
So if somebody speaks up with these bereaved children that love that person that died, that mother, and they want to fill in, okay, it'll be a joy, And sometimes, I know it's a struggle raising children, and you got to go through a lot with that. But in the long run, the fact that you took time out to do that, it's a blessing. You know, I look at grandparents today, how they got to raise their children because the mother is out there on drugs or out there doing what she got no business doing. But instead of putting them in the system, now grandma has to go through the same process of raising a child. And she should be enjoying life, going here and there. Love means a lot.
Another resource I would say, particularly when you're dealing with young children, and actually this works for adults as well, because again, depending on where they are and their capacity to hear, children's books. I know that sounds like a little out there, but there are a number of children's books that cover grief that make it more palatable for a young person. And then you can have that conversation in ways that is age appropriate. So that's another thing I want to highlight. Make sure, depending on the age of the child, that is age appropriate. Because to try to have a kid understand, a 5-year-old understand, you know, at a 16-year-old's level or, you know, something like that, that's just not going to work.
Right.
But should you talk to them and find out how they feel? Because of this loss, personally, you know,
I would invite them to draw it.
Huh?
I would invite them to draw it.
Oh, to draw it instead of speaking.
To draw it, yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's almost like taking from play therapy. You know what I mean? Just allow them to draw it and then tell you about the picture. You know, because then that's going to give them more capacity for words.
Express themselves.
Absolutely.
And through words. Okay.
Absolutely.
I understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like therapy for the children, particularly like you said, when they can tell you how they feel.
Because you ask them, you want to know, and they'll tell you quicker than an adult will.
Yeah,
exactly.
So they see that, you know, you're concerned and you want to know, hey,
exactly,
you're going through it. How do you feel now that mommy or daddy is not here no more because of death? Because, you know, I'll never see them again. What's the reality of living and dying? When I was a young boy, grew up in church, I say that when I do my sermons at funerals, why did I have to live if I got to die one day? That made no sense. You know, but now the closer I get the guard down, I realize I really don't have to die. I can just fall asleep, anticipate waking up again, being with him in heaven. See, now I'm at that stage down in my life. I wasn't always there, but I'm at that stage down in my life. You know, it was at one point where, hey, what's the use of living if I want to die?
Absolutely.
You know,
Another, because we're talking about children real quick. I'm sorry. I'm just going to bend down to get this book. It just happens to be within my reach. So another good book. This is a good book. This is called The Invisible Tattoo. And it is a compilation of stories, poems, and such from loved ones but from the mouths of children who have lost a significant, like a parent or a sibling, you know, or whatever, by whatever means. So I actually did a workshop with mental health with children, and this is one of the resources that I gave to all of them, because out here, and I'm sure there's one in New York, there's an organization that specifically deals with grief in children for no money. So it's not even, you have to have a certain amount of insurance or whatever, but they specialize in grief in children because it's just so intricate.
That has always been my concern with children when they lose their parent at a young age, like that 4, 5, 6, 7 age, because they really do not understand. They just know. Right. So even when you tell them, well, you know, mommy, daddy, or whoever is not coming back, I think it's still hard for them, like, to process, like, why are they not coming back?
Yeah, you're gonna have to reinforce it. It's gonna have to be reinforced. Absolutely. And you just, at each stage that they're in, you know, you just do it at, you know, what is age appropriate at that time. Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's always was my prayer. To let me live until my daughter got up to size where she could take care of herself or whatever, because I didn't want someone else taking care of me and like that. And, you know, same thing with my mother. I always prayed, God, let my mother live until I get, you know, grown. Thank God he has answered all my prayers. And so I'm on my last prayer with him is let me stay around a while to see my granddaughter get up sometimes. You want to be seeing them. And that's so hard on children when something happens, when they have become attached to the grandparents or, to the parents, and then something happened. That's always been my main concern, and how to help them and how to deal with them. And, because I don't even know how I would talk to them. I don't even
see, but when the time comes, hopefully it never comes. When that time comes, you'll be able to deal with it, because you never know what you're going to do until the time comes.
That's absolutely right.
What you need for that time, you'll be able to handle it. Okay? Because it's in your heart, and you'll get the right directions through God, through your friends, through others that will help you to make it through what might happen. Like I say, we're not predicting nothing about you losing your daughter, then you got to raise your granddaughter and all that stuff. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, you'll be all right. It'll come to you. Yeah, and you blow your own mind.
I do my best not to go too far ahead. Like I do have my son is young, right? So my son, I'm a late mama, right? So my son is 5, right? And my mother has been having a lot of issues with her health, right? Earliest, I don't even think it's 2 months into she had to have a pacemaker, right? So this congestive heart failure, right? And so my son is very attached to my mother, which makes a whole lot of sense. And so I begin to imagine what it is like, what it would be like for me to have that conversation with him. But I have purposely made myself stop, right? Even though there's a level of preparation, whatever that's like, right? Because you can never be prepared adequately for these things. But I more have turned that energy into making sure that they have these interactions, even with the pandemic, not that she's in our house, but that he calls her daily and they could do FaceTime and they have this little song, because again, how we remember, right? So like when I have to have, when that time comes and I have to have that conversation with him, even at 5 years old or whatever age that he is at, I can help him remember. Oh, remember that little song that you and grandma used to do? I love you. I love you. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm actively working to build his memories, even at 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anything else that you might need after that will come to you.
Absolutely.
And you will wonder, hey, where did this come from? But it's right.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. Because if I harp on, she's sick and she's right. I'm taking her out of here before she's gone anywhere. Well,
you know what? I have to say, I just want to thank the both of you for really coming on. This has really been good therapy for me, even though we're talking to the audience about grief and their loss and stuff. But I realize now this is what we need. It's just therapy where we are talking about what grief is. And that therapy is more important to me than anything else, because it's like we talked about it, you're listening, the person can talk about it. Like you said, whoever have lost someone, find that support. In the family. If it's not in the family, it's in your friends. It could be in your coach. It could be anyone that can support you. And we need to also, like you and Reverend Delk said about when someone does die, everybody's calling you when it happened, but then you don't hear from anybody.
That's right.
And we need to stay in contact with the people.
That's right. Follow them on. That's right. Journey with. That's right.
Okay, so
don't ever feel that you're alone. Find some self.
Be willing to reach out. Some people don't want to reach out, but be willing to reach out. So I want to just thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
This was awesome. Nice meeting you, Reverend Delk. It was awesome.
Yes.
Sharing minds and space and spirit with you.
Well, listen, we're here, and you got my number, and anytime.
Yes, amen.
Feel free.
I want to pray that we all stay safe during this pandemic.
No, I'm not staying safe.
Don't say we worried about that. We
I'm talking about me. I'm talking about me. I'm already safe. I just want to.
Amen. Okay.
But no, Reverend Delk, I have to say, I'm on the same road.
I know that. I know what you mean.
You know, she was scared to come out of the house. She didn't want her daughter to come over to visit. Her daughter was coming up from North Carolina. She didn't want the daughter to come to the house, you know, to see her and everything. And I just finished talking to her and saying, why don't you let your daughter come to that house to see you? Why you keep saying something's going to happen just because you're staying inside and nothing has happened?
We're not trusting God. We're not believing.
I said
he hasn't changed. He hasn't changed.
That's exactly what I said to her. I said, then you're not trusting the man that you tell me you trust. Because you let her in your house. She's coming up from North Carolina. She wants to see her mother. You should be wanting to see your daughter. Nothing is going to keep me apart from seeing. You know, so I don't know what happened for Thanksgiving. I got to find out if she let her in the house or what afterwards. But you can't tell people, you know, what to do or whatever, you know, like that. But hopefully, thank you all for watching.
Thank you. Have a blessed holiday season.
Yes. You need to contact Reverend Jackson. Her information was up. You need to contact Reverend Delk. His information was up. So please give them a call if you need to speak to them further.
Tell them to call me so I can call them for their birthdays. I don't mind.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Give you my date.
Call Reverend Delk so he can call you every day. He wakes people up at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Once a year.
So we want to thank you again. So remember to watch Keeping It Real with Shannon. You can always see us on Brick Arts Media on Saturdays at 5:30 p.m. and Manhattan Neighborhood Network at 2:30 p.m. You can see us there. And you can continue to watch us every Tuesday night on YouTube and Facebook Live on Keeping It Real with Shannon. So thanks again. And as always, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Okay, happy holiday.
Amen.
Today's show is sponsored by Abu's Bakery. If you have a sweet tooth, stop by Abu's Bakery for some delicious cakes and pies.
It's Shannon.